everybody. We are live on Facebook. That was so fast. For our regulars that join us on Zoom, they changed something. Do you guys remember last week we couldn't go live? Well, this week I can press a button and we're live. And remember the whole like 2-minute whole thing we used to have to go through? It's way better now. For all of us people, all of the new people joining us, my name's Via Williams. I'm with the Ben Kinney Companies, and this is our weekly real estate agent training webinar. We do these every single Wednesday at noon Pacific time. So for all you East Coasters, that's 3 p.m. your time. Those of you in the central part of the US, that is 2. I don't think you need me to do math. You guys all know the math. And every single week we come together and we do webinars that highlight very, very specific topics on what real estate agents can do right then and there to work on their business. The goal of these webinars is that every single Wednesday you leave them and you have between 1 and 3 things that you can implement within an hour of the webinar, right? So this is the place to come to get tools in your tool belt. They're very timely. I literally map these out for the market of the week. I mean, these are very, very proactive. In fact, speaking of which, fresh off the press, I have Sarita Dua back next week. She was one of our highest viewed webinars we've ever had. She's won 10 out of 10 of her last offer submitted. Let me say that again. She has submitted 10 offers and won all 10. So we're going to bring Sarita back and we're going to do an update on everything you need to know about buyers right now. Most of her business is a buyer business. If you come live, we'll interact with you. You can ask us questions. I cannot recommend it enough. She is a genius when it comes to buyers. And I have been begging her to come back and her schedule is super booked. So that is really, really cool. That's going to be Wednesday, May 12th. And as always, you will have, replays that you can watch, right? So, okay, let me pull up my notes. I am so excited, you guys. I have been talking with Kimberlee Meserve for a couple weeks now, right? For like 3 or 4 weeks now, right, Kimberlee?
Yeah, I think so.
I wanted you to come on a long time ago, and we just had to get our schedules together because you were on vacation, that's awesome. You're living your life by design. And the reason, Kimberlee, that I wanted you on is that you are crushing it right now with doing virtual workshops, and we're going to walk through what that is. But in a nutshell, you're in the Boston area, right? And you're in your 3rd full year. Is that fair to say? Full year of being a rainmaker and
second, actually, 2nd full year. Now that sorry, no, this would be the 3rd.
Can you guys hear her? Okay, I cannot hear her.
Can you hear me?
Let me check the chat. Can you guys hear?
Can you hear me okay?
Okay. Awesome.
Are we good? Okay. People say they can hear me.
Kimberlee, keep talking.
Okay. Can you hear me now, Via?
Here we are. Okay, that was fun. There's always something technical.
You roll with the punches in real estate.
I just roll with them at this point. I mean, we couldn't even go live on Facebook last week, so no sound is just fine. I apologize, Kimberlee. Whatever you were saying, I couldn't hear.
Yeah, so you're right. This is now my 3rd full year. So 2019 was my 1st full year. I'm just not good at math.
That's okay. 3% of anything. We're on the 3rd year. And I think, Kimberlee, that's what's so amazing about you. Ben Kinney was like, you need to get her on your webinar because we're just both kind of blown away. Your first, I'm going to call it full year because I know you were on a team for a while and then kind of came off on your own, but your first full year, let me check the numbers. You did, was it about 15 million? Is that?
I did 11.7. And then last year I did 23.5 million.
23.5. That's exactly what I have. Yeah. So not only is that an extremely strong first year, you doubled it pretty much your 2nd year. And what would you say you're on track to do this year?
The goal is 40 million and I'm 40% of the way there.
And you are 30% through the year. So you are pacing, you're ahead of pace. So how many families will you serve to hit that number in Boston, give or take?
That
How many
will
units?
be about 79.
Okay. Okay. I just want to give everybody a context. I always think it helps to kind of lay out, what that is. So that's really impressive, Kimberlee. And I think it's especially impressive because, you just came right out of the gate. Doing 11 million your first year is massive. I mean, we throw around a lot of numbers, on this. I mean, I interview people that, that do, a billion in volume, like Ben Kinney and Sarah Reynolds. Doing 11 million your first year is stellar. And most agents won't hit that number. So, I mean, I just want to pause a moment and acknowledge that. That's really.
Thank you. Well, that's really kind of you. And what I'm really excited about what we're going to talk about today is that I didn't know anybody in my market. So there are no excuses. And the stuff that we're going to share is hopefully going to be valuable for people that are in the same shoes as I am, that they can take and implement right away and be able to plug into a system to have big results.
I love that. Real quick, before we dive into all that, you were a competitive equestrian and you rode at the World Championships.
I did.
Yeah. What was your event?
It's called Saddle Seat. A lot of people do not know what it is. But it's kind of like if you see on the Olympics dressage where they do like the patterns and stuff, I did something similar to that. Absolutely loved it. Like that was my life when I was younger. And then I took a 11-year hiatus from it because it's very expensive. And my parents fortunately helped me out with that a lot when I was younger. And now because of real estate, I've been able to get back into it. So last year I actually bought my first horse that I owned on my own, which was really cool.
Oh, congratulations. That's amazing. And, we don't always talk about it on these webinars. I talk about it more in my podcast, but, living a life by design, that is what we do this for, to buy horses, to go on vacations, to be with our families. So like really kudos to you for not only building a kick-ass business, but for building a kick-ass big life. I mean, that is my jam. You're speaking my language, girl. I love it.
Thanks.
All right. So let's walk into this. So you're on a real estate team, you were learning about real estate and then you go off on your own. What gave you the idea to do first time buyer seminars? How did this whole thing start?
Yeah. So it kind of does overlap with me being on a team because I'm a competitive person, but I don't like cutthroat competitiveness. And the team that I was on, the environment, and this has been a huge cultural learning moment for me as I'm growing my own team, was kind of a cutthroat environment. And everybody was like fishing out of the same pond of leads. And I didn't want to have to be calling new leads at 10 p.m. at night, which some people on my team were doing. And so I kind of was like, well, what can I do that's my own thing? And I won't have to have that competitiveness that is just, it's like a balance of being competitive and enjoying your life, right? So for me, a life by design was not calling new leads at 10 p.m. at night. And I also saw this opportunity because, like you were saying, just to put things into perspective of how many units to the volume, like we do have a high average price point here. I believe my first year, it was around $500,000. And a lot of people see that and they think I can't afford to buy a home. And so I was meeting a lot of younger people that had great jobs. They were in positions to buy a house. They were paying a really expensive amount of money each month in rent, and they weren't making that plunge into home ownership. So I saw that as an opportunity to really be educating people and to provide them with the information to empower them to become homeowners.
I love that. So, so with all that said, what gave you the idea? I'm assuming how you started this was in person, first time.
Yeah. So I started them actually in the spring of 2018. I did 2 of them at my office, and the first one was okay. The second one was a total failure. Nobody showed up. And then it was a beautiful day, and it's like springtime after a long winter in Boston. Nobody wants to go to a real estate office. So my lender and I kind of brainstormed, and we were like, where would our ideal client want to be on a nice day? Even if it's great weather, like they'll still show up. And so we came up with the idea of doing them at a local brewery. And it was fun because we were supporting local business. It was a place where our ideal clientele was going to, hanging out, and it was just a less intimidating environment for buyers too. So from 2018 through right before when COVID hit, we were doing them 1 to 2 times a month at a local brewery.
Okay. And then COVID hit. You had all your events planned out for the year, right? You were pretty much mapped out. That was your lead generation plan. That
Yep.
was going to be how you built your business. What'd you do?
I did. So my coach was wonderful, and she forced me to track my numbers. And so I knew, like when I was planning for the year, I knew how many events I had to do to hit the goal of how many houses I wanted to sell. So I just figured, okay, I just have to do 2 events a month. I'll hit my goal, maybe exceed it. And so when COVID hit, I didn't really have a backup plan. Like there's no other option. I have to do this. What else am I going to do? So we already had, like, we had to make the call kind of really quickly, and we already had like 20 people registered or something like that. So we were just like, all right, let's pivot, which I feel like this word is overused a little bit at this point, but it was a moment of having to pivot, and we decided to do them virtually on Zoom.
Okay, so you took all the people and you said, hey, we're going into quarantine, here's the login. When you pivoted from being in person to Zoom, did it really change anything, any content or how you did it?
That was my biggest fear, was it just was going to be a total flop, especially because my whole year was riding on this.
Yeah.
It actually, there were a few blessings that came out of it, or things that we just discovered that were different than the environment. So first of all, you have to be able to engage an audience on a screen, which is very different than reading a room full of people. But that was a learning curve for me. We did have about the same attendance, which was great. We kept the content the same. What we would do is print like a booklet, and they would get it to write in at the event. So we just would send it out as a PDF beforehand, screen share it, go through it. So it's all the same content. And then I had to get really good with those like awkward silences of when we asked questions. People, it's not like in person when you're sitting there, yep, and someone's going to say something. When you're all hiding behind a camera, or like your camera's off, it's easy to not engage. So you had to really learn to just sit there and live in the awkwardness and wait for people to engage, so that they understood, like, this next hour and a half is meant to be valuable. We want you to get your questions answered. So we're going to make sure your questions are answered. I did find though that people asked a lot better questions. I think it's a blessing and a curse of like not having that face to face, but people also feel a little less afraid because you're not sitting in a room full of your peers being like, what if I ask a stupid question?
Yeah, that's true. And it is so awkward because I do Zooms all the time. I'm always like, you can unmute yourself, like actually unmute yourself and then mute again when the dog's barking. But yeah, I know it's a little dance there, I think, between the mute, unmute. And you do this with a lender, by the way, we should say, right? Because a lender is a really big part of first time home buying, right?
I do. So really important for anybody that wants to do this, choose your lender carefully. There's a lot of lenders that are great at what they do, but they're not the greatest at explaining the process and just being very customer facing. So that was, finding the right partner was a really important part of it. I kept it simple. So I don't bring in title, we're an attorney state. I don't bring my attorney in. I don't bring a home inspector in. They just want to know, can I afford to buy a house if I have student loans or all these other debts? And what do I need to do to get started? So the lender is a really big part of that process.
Yeah, I think they're a huge part of that process. And I think you're absolutely right. I've done a couple of these, and the lender partner, it has to be that perfect marriage, right? Between both of you being good presenters and both of you being good at your craft. And if you're not, if you're not a great presenter, but you're really good at real estate, this is when you might want to start thinking about a team and get someone on your team that is a good presenter. Or if I would like to think all of you are good at your craft. I would like to think the back end is just fine. But same with your lender. If your lender's, the lender you want, and they're not a great presenter, maybe they have someone on their team, who's really good at that. So Kimberlee, can we kind of dive in, and do you want to kind of walk us through the nuts and bolts of what one of these looks like? So what a home buyer Zoom effectively seminar looks like with you.
Yeah. So kind of the basic outline. And actually I was listening to a recording of something that one of my favorite KW faculty coach, whatever, James Shaw was saying, is how important it is to set buyer expectations right now. We're doing a lot of that in the event, so that by the time we're meeting them for an appointment, they've kind of been hearing this over and over again. So it's not a surprise of like what's going on in the market. The expectation has already started to be set. So the basic format is we're starting by talking about what's going on in the market. We explain the difference between a buyer's market, a seller's market, what is absorption rate, how does that affect you? We ask them, we're kind of asking them to engage in like, what have you heard? Because I do find very interesting answers. Sometimes I've had people recently say, I've heard it's a buyer's market. And I'm like, okay. Anyways, that's fascinating. So we're asking.
And ours, maybe.
Maybe. It's good to get a pulse though on what they're hearing versus what the reality is so that we can be bringing them back to reality. So we talk about the market, we talk about benefits of home ownership, tax benefits, all of that type of stuff. And then a huge section of it is lending. So my lender is talking about the difference between a pre-qualification, pre-approval. They even do something called a pre-commitment where they put you through underwriting ahead of time so that you can waive your financing contingency. What goes into a pre-approval, credit, assets, all that type of stuff. What are the major loan types, closing costs, all the different things you need to know. Then we're talking, so after the lending piece is when I really start setting the expectation that the next step is to set an appointment. So we're talking about the overall timeline. You're here today, you want to buy a house in the next 12 months. What happens next? So that's when we're starting to soft close them. And I think that's a huge mistake that a lot of people make when they try these first-time homebuyer workshops is they aren't closing people at all. And when we used to do them in person, I physically like had a piece of paper that had sign up slots on it. And it was like, if you want to sign up for an appointment with me, here are the available spots. And now we do it like with Calendly links and that kind of stuff. So we're talking about what are the steps after this? And then what are the 3 kind of major types of properties? What do you need to know from a real estate side of things? And then a financing side of things.
That's great. Okay. And then the call to action is you're closing for one-on-one appointments for a buyer consult.
Exactly. So we're setting the expectation. If you are anywhere within 12 months of making a purchase, the next step is for you to meet with us. Even if you're not ready to go put an offer on a house today, buy a house, what we'll do is we'll sit down and talk about what does that ideal property look like. We'll get you set up on a property search and you'll start seeing what's going on the market and what things are selling for. And by the time you are ready to make a purchase, you're now going to be one of the most educated buyers out there.
I love that. I love that. I'm taking notes right now because this is so good. For all of my team leaders that are watching and any team leaders watching, this is exactly how I think a career night is, by the way, that we're leading them, we're shepherding them down a path and we're telling them what to expect and where they are in the process. I think there's a really good parallel here to career nights. Okay. Back from my bunny trail. So that's kind of the walkthrough of that. How are you setting appointments? Are you setting appointments right then and there one by one and waiting, in breakout rooms? Are you just chatting with them? What's going on? How are you doing that?
That's a really good idea. Maybe I'll start doing that. We are following up with them with some additional things. So we give them the booklet of the workshop ahead of time. So if they want to print it out and take notes, I've had plenty of people do that. There's a couple things that we leave out from that booklet that become follow-up documents. So like one thing, for instance, is we say, the next step is to hire your agent. We would love to work with all of you. And should you choose not to work with us, it is really, really important that you do your due diligence and select the right agent. We will send you a document with some questions to ask an agent when you're interviewing agents. And of course, every answer on there is made to make us look good. So we send that, we send like a buying timeline with a email to everybody, whether or not they attended or they didn't. Everybody that registered is getting this email. And the email is basically like, thank you for attending. Here's the extra documents. If you couldn't attend, here's our next event. So we send a link to that. We usually get a few re-registrations that way. And then our contact information. So that's the first step. What's happening a lot more than when we did them in person is a lot more people are meeting with my lender first, which I love because it's saving so much time. And then we're reaching out to everybody. And if they didn't attend, we're sending them a link asking if they want us to re-register them for the next event. Sorry, you couldn't make it, that type of thing. And then if they did attend, we're just kind of a soft opener to the conversation is, hey, thanks for showing up. Would you like us to get you started on a preliminary search? And that's a really great conversation starter that we found with these first time buyer leads, because sometimes you can't be too aggressive with them, but the preliminary search, they will self-categorize. So typically they'll say, yeah, that sounds great. And then you can qualify them from there. Like, awesome. Where are you looking? When are you hoping to buy? Or they'll say, no, I'm not ready. I'm like 2 years out in the process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. I did you know why I know about breakout rooms? Because when you do 40 to 50 webinars a year with rock stars like you every single week, you learn a thing or two. And we have a couple of our top teams in the nation, Kimberlee, that are, as part of their seminars and workshops, virtual workshops, they're doing breakout rooms with different team members, just planting that seed. And it's a big part of it. And they're kind of using those. I've attended some of them to observe, and you go into the breakout room and they're a little bit more of an intimate conversation. People are kind of more free to kind of discuss it, and then that particular agent is now closing them on the next appointment.
I love that. That's such a good idea.
The other thing that I wrote on my notes that's a thought for you and for anybody is that you could have a Calendly link constantly going through your chat, and you can keep referring to it and saying, hey, you guys, it's really important that we schedule you, because that's the first step in this. We're going to put a Calendly link, and while we're meeting here today, you can go ahead and sign yourself up for, a virtual consult. So that's another note that I wrote.
That's a great idea. And my lender uses a Calendly link for all of his scheduling. I would actually be more inclined to put his Calendly link in there, because I found, a lot of people are willing to meet with you, but they don't even know if they have good credit or anything. And I just try to waste as little time as possible now. So I really, really strongly encourage them to at least start talking with my lender before I'll even meet with them. And I do set that expectation is like, this is really important, because I would hate for us to be meeting and talking about this beautiful 5-bedroom house that you want when all you can afford is that 1-bedroom condo.
Very, very well said. Yeah. Okay, we're starting to get the next logical question. So Rhonda and Susie, I've got you guys because we're going to dive into your question. And the question is, how do we get people there, Kimberlee?
That is a good question. So I didn't know anybody when I moved to Boston, and I did know how to do Facebook ads. And that's the sole method of promotion that I do for these. It's pretty simple. And I've had people ask if I've done them on command or just on Facebook. I have not been able to have the same success through command. Not that there's anything wrong with command. If somebody cracks the code, please tell me, because I'm sure it will save me a lot of money.
For all of our guests today, Kimberlee, I should say this is a brokerage agnostic webinar. We invite agents from all different brokerages. Command is our Keller Williams in-house, platform that we use on the back end for all of our stuff. So when someone says command, that's what they mean. All right, keep going.
Sorry about that. So I run them directly on Facebook. Perfect, because this is brokerage agnostic. I just go in, I do a simple promotion for traffic. So we want to make sure we select the right type. And then I'm targeting. What I did for a while, where we moved into doing them virtually, it didn't matter how many people attended. So I got less specific with my targeting, because ultimately you can have like 100 people on a Zoom. Recently though, I just found we kind of had this trend of getting a lot of unqualified people. So we went back to what we were doing when we were doing that in person, which is I sat down and I mapped out who my ideal client was. So I looked at the people that I had worked with in the past that I absolutely loved working with and were easy to work with. And I kind of made just like a vision board of what does that person look like? What is their career? What are their
avatar? You did your ideal.
Yep, my ideal client profile. And I turned that into a Facebook targeting profile. So different job fields of people that I've enjoyed working with, those all became targeting criteria. And then I added the extra level of filter to filter first-time home buyers and people interested in an FHA loan. That has actually yielded a much higher, a better result. It's a lower cost per click, actually. So because it's sending to more of the right people. And then, so we're setting them up through Facebook. We're filtering them. I'm only putting them on Facebook newsfeed because you can get specific about where they're going. I've tried other things and just haven't had the same luck. And then the ad is very simple. It's basically like, hey, Boston, are you thinking of buying a home? click here to join our free first-time homebuyer seminar. We'll talk about some of the special financing programs available to buyers. It sends them to an Eventbrite page where they can then register. One thing I didn't do for the longest time was I was paranoid to ask people for their phone numbers. I just thought people were not going to sign up. So if you're going to do this, make sure you go into Eventbrite and add that as an additional field for registration to capture their phone numbers, and it won't affect your conversion rates or anything.
So what makes you do Eventbrite and not have them go right into Zoom? I'm curious.
We did them on Eventbrite when we did them in person. So I just kept the system the same way. I think you could put them into Zoom. That just became my system of how I did things. And I had like a good flow with it. But I think there probably wouldn't be any issue with sending them right to Zoom. I also liked some of the customization I could add with Eventbrite, like putting a link to my website and putting specific graphics and a little bit more descriptions and testimonials from past attendees and all of that.
I love that. And I do that too sometimes. I was genuinely curious because I sometimes wonder, the reason I like Eventbrite is you can not give the link till the last minute, you know, I don't know why sometimes that feels like I have a little bit more control. It might be a false sense of it, you know, and I do think Eventbrite has good SEO and good customization.
It does, yeah. If somebody's on Eventbrite and they're just looking for like a first-time homebuyer seminar in your area, they'll find it compared to if you do Zoom. The other part too is it allows us to do another level of confirmation. So we don't send the link until the day before. We're sending text messages out beforehand though, saying, thank you for registering for tomorrow's event. We only have limited seats on there. We want to make sure we save you one. Are you still attending? Yes or no? And then they'll respond. So we have an idea ahead of time how many people have confirmed.
And we're going to get into numbers in a minute. I want to stay on one thing, and I do kind of want to stay on that whole ideal customer avatar Facebook thing. So just to confirm, you've got it nailed down to, you know, maybe you tell me, but age, income, location, what they do. Is that fairly accurate? Just demographics?
You can't target age on Facebook because of market, like fair housing, that kind of stuff. If it's in a special category, which is housing, it has to be between the age of like 18 and 65 plus. So that's one thing I can't target. But what I am looking at is like, what are their interests? What are their careers? So we have a lot of people in the sciences here, a lot of biotech people. Those people are also more likely to be able to afford to buy a house. So that's what I'm looking at and putting in when I'm targeting people.
And are you putting that's their occupation or their interest?
Yeah. So I'm mostly targeting by occupation, but I am adding some layers of interest as well.
Okay.
One of my friends said it's so funny. He was like, you like working with smart people. And I was like, yeah, I guess kind of.
Well, you know, if someone's comfortable enough coming onto a Zoom for a virtual first-time homebuyer seminar, that's going to weed people out right there.
Yeah.
Probably, right? I mean, you're probably already on track to get your ideal client. And so let's talk about the numbers. So Facebook has been your number one source. We're going to dive into a little bit how you've pivoted even more though. And now your database is turning into a source because we're turning these into home seller seminars, but let's stay on the buyer for a second. Let's go through the numbers a little bit. What's your average number of people that you have registered and how many show up from that?
Yeah, so on average, we'll have close to 50 each time. And then it's about 50% registration to attendance. So we're typically getting around 25 people each event. From there, we're usually seeing about a 20% conversion rate from them attending to becoming a client. So signing a buyer agency agreement. And then in this market, we're seeing about 50% of those people actually buying a house because it is tough for those FHA low down payment people.
So 50 people come. Let me just do math. Help me with math. 50 people come. So there's 50 people confirmed. 25 will come. Out of the 25, you said about 50% will sign a buyer agreement and get pre-approved?
20%. So we're getting about 4 to 5 clients per event.
Perfect. And you're getting 4 or 5 clients that'll sort of sign with you. Out of those 4 or 5 clients, will they all close on a house right now?
About 50%. And that's really looking in like that first year. The thing that has been a little bit more challenging to track is we've done such a good job continuing relationships that I now have people that attended our very first event in 2018 that are just buying houses now. I've had people that were looking and then they kind of like had to take a break, and I am still their realtor for life. Like, I got a call out of the blue from someone the other day and he was like, I'm ready, like it's time. And I'm like, oh my God, I haven't talked to you. And like, shame on me, I haven't talked to you in way too long.
Okay, I really want to pause on that for a minute, Kimberlee, because what you just said is really what I want everybody here to hear. This is a funnel, not just for now business, but you're funneling your pipeline. You're funneling your pipeline and you're building your database with this. You didn't know anyone when you came to Boston, right? So what has to come behind this, guys, is automation. Because Kimberlee, there's no way any human on the planet can keep in touch with their database at the level they need to. She just said she hadn't talked to them in years. That's because of automation. So if you're not on a good CRM, the one tool that every single one of you needs, anyone watching or listening to this, is a good CRM that can automate, you know, a 24 touch program or whatever you're doing. And I would argue, guys, really what they want to see are houses, either property market reports, if they own a house, right? They want to see what's selling in their neighborhood, or a home search. They don't want your recipes, right? They really need, that's all they need. You could set people up on home searches or market reports and nothing else for 2 or 3 years, and you'll double your business from what you're doing if you don't have that at all.
100%. So we use Brevity as our CRM, and we've kind of taken the 10 days of pain and made a more custom version specific to the home buyer seminars. And if we aren't hearing from them, we'll just set them up on a market report for the area. And then I've had people that I reached out to, I texted them probably 20 times. They never texted me back. And then all of a sudden they'd be like, we're ready to buy a house. Like, can we meet with you? So it's all about the follow-up, especially with these leads.
Yeah, 100%. I just wanted to pause on that and make sure everyone really heard what you were saying, right? That you're not just having these buyer seminars, taking the people who can sell a home now and then forgetting about them. You know, you're like, okay, plan A is that they turn into our A's, you know, but then there's going to be another percentage that are B's and another percentage that are C's. I call C's nurture. So for me, A is now, you know, B is 30 to 90-ish days. Maybe they're in a lease, maybe they're relocating. There's kind of a hard date down the pike. And a C is just a nurture, you know, maybe in a year or two or whatever, right? And so what Kimberlee's describing, guys, is really, really normal for really any lead gen. It's cumulative effect. So it might be 2% first year. In your case, it'd be 4%. If you just take 50 to 2, if you were conservative, you said, okay, for every 50 that said that they were going to come to our you know, first time buyer webinar, if I do the math down, it's like maybe 2 will close, 2 to 4, but let's say 2. So that's 4%. But what Kimberlee's saying now is then it starts, you know, it might be 5% the next year. It might be 6, 7, 8% over time because you have a database.
And it becomes a network thing too. So I've had people that never bought from me that referred their friends to me. They attended the event. They never ended up buying from me, but they told their friends about me. So it's like, it becomes a spider web and it's limitless.
Yeah. And then what happens is you put their friends in your database and then it goes round and round, like you said. Danielle had a really good question. What is your average Facebook spend? Or I guess maybe what was it when you started, and, you know, what have you kind of worked up to? Because I'm guessing you've worked it up higher now. You're more dialed in.
No, actually, it's the same as it's the same as what it's always been. I was taught a formula from somebody that is like a Facebook marketing guru. What you need to do, and so what my spend is going to be very different from anybody else unless they're watching in the Boston area. When you put your targeting together, it will show you a target audience of like how many your potential reach is. And ours is about 50,000 based on all the different criteria that I've put in. You take the first 3 numbers of that, and that is what your spend should be on the ad. So we spend about $500 per event on the advertising. I think a lot of people tend to underspend on this, and that's why they don't get a lot of people attending. They only get a handful. So that's how you figure out what to spend. And we're doing them twice a month. So it's about $1,000 a month that we're spending on these.
And what do you pay? Do you pay for clicks? I know there's different options on Facebook Ad Manager. How do you do it?
Traffic is what we're driving traffic to the Eventbrite page.
Got it. To Eventbrite page. That's great. Okay. Thank you. I'm literally taking notes. This is so good, Kimberlee. Thank you so much. I love how dialed in you are on specifics and that you can just answer the questions. It's really, really helpful.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think the most important, just to like kind of put a bow on that really quickly, is track everything. So if I had not been tracking these events and all of my numbers, I would have given up very quickly. One of our first events was very, very well attended. We had like 30 something people there. The second event was 4 people. And I was so bummed out after that. Every single person that attended that event became my client. So I would rather have an event that 4 people show up and they all convert to being a client versus one where 30 people show up and I don't turn any of those into buyers. So it is really important to track everything you do.
I love that. So I just want to go back a little bit. We got a great question, and I agree. I find myself wanting the answer to this again. So when we're talking about the auto plan flow, the workflow, right? So they come in from Facebook ad and they go into Eventbrite. How many emails? What does that look like? How many emails? How many texts? What's leading up to the event, right? What does that auto plan look like?
Yeah, so they're getting about 3 touches before the event from us. So they're getting actually 4. So they get an auto email from Eventbrite once they've registered. Then we're reaching out via text message. And the reason we text is because we've just found that most of these people, that is how they prefer to be communicated with. And I ask every single one of my clients, how do you prefer to be communicated with? And the vast majority prefer text message. And I think it's just like a fellow millennial thing. So they're getting a text from us the day before the event, confirming if they're attending. And then they're getting, once they say yes, we say, great, keep an eye out in your inbox. We'll be sending a Zoom link out later on tonight. They're getting an email with a Zoom link, and then they're getting another email that's automated the morning before the event with a reminder with the Zoom link again. And then we have the event.
And do you can do all that through Brivity. So do you do that as an auto plan in Brivity, or do you keep them in Eventbrite until?
We keep them in Eventbrite until after the event, because just the way our lead flow is set up, we haven't figured that all out in Brivity yet. We're relatively new to Brivity.
You know, one thought on that, because I've done something similar before, is you can use Zap or PieSync or RealSync or one of those, and you can actually, if you wanted to, you could have someone registering on Eventbrite trigger right into an auto plan on Brivity that takes care of emails and texts and everything. And I've done that before, and it's pretty sweet. So, you know, that is something you might want to think about, because it goes right into your CRM that way. All right.
I love that idea.
Yeah. I can kind of walk you through that a little bit. It's really effective because you get to a point where when you're scaling, where you don't want to double enter, you know, everything. But yeah. I do like your Eventbrite idea. I think that's smart. I think they're really good SEO. I think that's probably kind of helping that whole process along. I have this sense that you should keep that Eventbrite. I don't know why.
Yeah. And I have so many, like I've done this 1 to 2 times a month since 2018. I have so many of them, and they all live as past events on Eventbrite now. So again, it's adding to that SEO.
I agree. I think that's really, really smart. All right. So, okay. So let's move into, you know, the pivot of the pivot. You started this out as live in-person first-time buyer seminars, and then they turned into virtual home buyer webinars, but you have a stellar database plan. Okay. Let's move into, what have they turned into now? Now they're turning into seller workshops. Is that correct? Listing?
Not workshops yet, but they are starting to turn into listings. I actually just closed my first listing from a buyer seminar last week, and we've got a couple more in the pipeline. So we are going to be putting together a seller event. But right now what I'm doing is I've been going through my database, and everybody that has lived in their house for 2 years or longer, I'm putting together a CMA video for them. So what that looks like is I'm doing it on Loom, which is just a free tool where it records your screen and it shows a little blur of you. And I'm going through a CMA that I've put together for them of their house. And then I'm showing them a net sheet and showing them how much equity they have in their property. And then I'm just sending it unsolicited as a link to them in an email and just saying, hey, haven't talked to you in a little bit, just wanted to keep you updated on your home value. I think it's really important, especially in an increasing market like the one that we're in. Let me know if you want me to send you a copy of the actual report, or if you have any questions. And it's just starting a conversation. Every single one I've sent out, they absolutely love it. A couple people are like, oh, this is great, I'm refinancing my house. And I've gotten a couple people that are like, we are going to be selling.
So you're doing that at the 2-year mark. That's brilliant. You're doing that at the 2-year mark.
Yeah, or just before, enough where they aren't going to have capital gains if they sell.
You know, what's amazing, everybody, is anyone here doing HomeVal leads, home valuation leads, that is a brilliant tactic to use. Kimberlee, that's really smart. And if any of you are Apple users like me, you don't even need Loom. It's embedded on QuickTime right onto your Apple operating system. You can do a screen recording with your voice. That is really good. And you don't have to do your hair. It's just your voice, right? It's just your voice. You are a smart cookie, Kimberlee. So what I'm hearing you say is that you're still doing home buyer seminars. It's just that you're able to convert some of those buyers into listings. Have you considered doing listing seminars or listing workshops?
Yeah, definitely have thought about it. It's like something that's in the works in my brain. I just haven't found that right answer yet. So yeah. I've started mapping it out, but I don't have it perfectly how I want it. And I'm trying to figure out like, what would the marketing look like for that? How am I going to target people? So it's in the works for sure. The other thing I just wanted to say about these events is like, it becomes such a massive web that you can be attracting people with. So we will have a lot of people that buy, and then they're like, my friend wants to buy. Can you send me a link to the event? And we've just created this network from that. So we've grown to about 40% repeat and referral business. And a lot of that is attributed to these events.
So question, when you're, do you have any calls to action on your database marketing that's inviting them to invite people? Do you invite your whole database to these every single event? How does that look?
We have tagged people in a couple different ways. So we have different calls to action based on where they're at. If they've never attended, they get put on a special follow-up campaign that includes just mass emails with, here's our upcoming events, sign up. We're also doing some like referral type programs with people that have attended. So they get a certain email and it's like, here are upcoming events. If you send a friend, let us know and we'll send you a gift card to the local brewery. So we've had good success with that. It's just another touch to remind people.
Yeah, I love that. Have you gotten into any testimonials, any video testimonials, or even having clients come onto these at all?
No, video testimonials are a really good idea. We have some written testimonials. They live on my website. They live on the Eventbrite page. So when they go to Eventbrite and it's like info about the event, we have a couple testimonials in there as well so that they know it's like a real thing. People have had great success with that. And then the other thing, just to loop back around about the database, one thing that we've been doing with really good success to keep in touch with our database is quarterly giveaways. So we just did one a couple weeks ago. We did $1,000 gift card. We called it a home makeover giveaway. We did $1,000 to either Home Depot or Crate and Barrel. The winner could choose. And it's just an excuse to stay in touch with every single person that lives in our database. And what we did was we sent them to a link to register to enter the giveaway. And we asked questions like, are you thinking about buying, selling, investing in real estate? Or do you know someone that we can help out with real estate? So I found out that way too. Some of my past clients were thinking like in the next year, they want to sell. And we got a lot of referrals as well.
I love that. How do you do, going back a minute, because I love that 2-year idea where you're just giving basically unsolicited CMAs. How do you know their net sheet? Do you just look at what they paid, what their down payment was when they bought?
Yeah. So it shows us in our MLS, there's a link to the tax database and it will show us what the recorded amount for the mortgage was when they bought. So then I'm just doing a rough estimate of like, based on that, the timing of when they bought, what their interest rate might be. And I'm just telling them this is a ballpark. Like you might have paid it down, you might have refinanced, but roughly this is what you have for equity in the property.
Yeah. I mean, they haven't paid down principal in 2 years. So, I mean, yeah. And most tax records would have the same. We do here in Washington State. We have that access too.
Yeah. For them, most of the equity that they're getting is just from the market appreciation.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have a YouTube channel with any content on it, from your events?
I don't. That's actually something that I'm working on planning out right now. Is we want to create like a resource for first-time homebuyers that has longer videos, short videos that are just quick answers to questions, but I haven't really dove into the video yet.
Yeah. Well, fair enough. That there's nothing wrong with that. It was a good question. I thought someone asked. So I love this. So for any of our, agents who have not done this, who kind of want to dive in, they like what they heard. What do you think their first couple steps are, Kimberlee?
Yeah, so I want to give everybody some actionable stuff that they can walk away with this. So I would say first, connect with a lender and get someone that's committed to doing this with you. I wouldn't switch it every time unless you have a bad experience with that. Like, this is a partnership, and that person should also be helping you with following up with the leads. Like, it's truly a partnership. I've actually become my lender's number one agent because we've done so many of these together. So find a lender to partner with, map out what you want the content of your event to be, and put together like either a slideshow or something that you can rely on to do during the event, that you're not just sitting there talking the whole time and they're looking at your face. And then just set up a Facebook ad and give it a shot. It's probably not going to be perfect this first time, but it wasn't perfect the first time I did it, and it's evolved over time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as long as you have a good lender partner and a set agenda, you can probably bumble your way for a while and do okay. I think most people will probably do okay if you know your stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot that we know as agents that we take for granted as information that like most people don't. And so even the more simpler things about our job and about the transaction is valuable information to the general public.
Yeah. What do you wish you would have done differently at first? Now that you know what you know, where were your big mistakes early on?
A big mistake that I made was I never captured anybody's phone numbers until about late 2019. I was just, for some reason, I was so scared. And I taught an agent, a referral partner who's about 2 hours away from where I live, how to do these events. And they started doing the phone numbers. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, why didn't I do that? And that's the reason why I started asking for them. And I missed out on so many opportunities because I didn't have that good contact information. Because a lot of people will just put a junk email. Like, they don't, it's like, I had got one the other day that was mydigitaltrashcan@gmail.com. Like, that's not someone's email that they're like receiving emails on all the time. But if you're registering for something and you're worried that it's going to be spam, you're probably sending a junk email. So I missed out on so many opportunities that way.
You have a lot of agents, local agents trying to register and check you out.
I get a lot of local, not as many local agents anymore, but I get so many agents in general, just because I've done this with Gary. Like, I've done all these different interviews, and I'm so happy to pour into people and to give back. But registering for the event is like, trust me, it's not a valuable use of your time. You know how to sell real estate.
So what do you do when local agents register? Did they do that early on? You mentioned they don't do that anymore.
Yeah, I had one show up one time, and I didn't realize until he showed up that he was an agent. And then I just looked at it as an opportunity to recruit him to Keller Williams. But we do unfortunately have to like scrub the list every time because we just get a lot of random stuff.
Yeah, I bet you do. I bet you do. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you want to share about all this? I'm blown away. I really think this is amazing stuff.
Yeah, I think that if you're going to do this, play the long game. It's a strategy. So part of the reason I decided to implement this as a primary lead generation tool in my business is that 78% of buyers will work with the first agent that they meet. So my job became to become the first agent that they met and then stay in touch with them, build that relationship over time. And then for me, I saw it as a really long game of, I'm going to stay in touch and become their agent of choice for life. So then they're going to sell with me, and then they're going to buy again and sell again. So if you do this, commit to it, and just think about it as like a really long game for database building.
Yeah, I love that. I am so happy, and my mind is spinning, both for my agents and my own business. I have to tell you, Kimberlee, I love this. I love everything about it. Well, thank you so much, my friend, for joining us for a very valuable hour of your time. I really appreciate it. And if anyone has any Boston referrals, how can they get a hold of you?
The best way to find me is to follow me on Instagram. Unfortunately, my Facebook is kind of maxed out. On Instagram, I'm at Kimberlee Meserve, Lee. Thank you to my parents for spelling my name that way. Or text me 978-587-6489. Also, I know that this is living on the Pivot Shift group, so feel free to comment on there. If you have a question for me, I will get back to you with an answer, hopefully.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. We really appreciate you, and send all your referrals to Kimberlee, you guys. And we're just going to continue this buyer theme a little bit next week with Sarita Duet. Do not miss it. When we had Sarita on, I think we had like 12,000 views of the last video. She is literally one of the top agents in the nation for buyers. I mean it, And so to go from Kimberlee to Sarita is unbelievable. Last week, I just want to touch on this. Last week, I was unable to go live. Very, very unusual for us. Facebook and Zoom had changed something. So we're going to do something we don't usually do, and we're gonna send you a YouTube link. Usually, we want you to live on the Pivot Shift Ahead page to look at the replay. The reason I'm sharing that is that Patrick Woods and I went deep. It was a very different type of a webinar, and we talked about how to push through slumps. And there's a lot of you out there right now who are watching your colleagues crushing it in this market, and you aren't. And I really felt strongly that I wanted to talk to you and let you know you're not the only ones, right? So Patrick and I went there. It was a really, really good and heartfelt webinar, a really good one to listen to in your car. So we're going to put the link on the Pivot page, in the group for you. And if you're registered here, we will email you that link as well, because I really think a lot of you probably need that. So thank you for joining us. We will see you next week with Sarita and a ton more in store. And Kimberlee, you're crushing it. Keep going, girl. We'll have you back.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Talk to you later.